Today's lesson is on ethnic minority. Every large society has ethnic minorities. They are minority in the sense that their style of life, language, culture and origin can differ from the majority. In addition to the traditional long-time resident minorities, ethnic minorities can be migrant, indigenous or landless nomadic communities. There is no legal definition of national or ethnic minorities in international law. Only the Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities gives a definition of national minority, which is deemed to be equivalent of ethnic minority. In this chapter today, in order to understand ethnic minorities, we begin by defining what ethnicity means. Then we proceed to examine ethnic relations as witnessed across the world and issues surrounding ethnic minorities in India. Understanding ethnicity. Ethnicity refers to the differentiation of groups of people who have shared cultural meanings and memories through social interaction. In classical Greek, the term ethnos and ethnokos were used to refer to a collectivity that shares similar cultural or biological characteristics. Today, ethnicity usually refers to the differentiation of social groups on the basis of four distinct criteria. First, a notion of homeland or place of common origin is a key element. It is often linked to the idea of a diaspora, where an ethnic group has migrated from the homeland to form communities elsewhere whose members identify with their place of origin. Second, a common language, either distinctive in itself or a distinct dialect of a language shared with others. Third, identification with a distinct religion, for example Sikhism, or a religion shared with others can be a central feature of many ethnic groups. Finally, a common culture with distinctive social institutions and behavior, diet and dress, as well as a common tradition or shared history of one's own people or nation are other criteria used in specifying ethnic groups. Scholars have made various attempts to develop typologies of ethnicity. These typologies include indigenous peoples, dispossessed and overwhelmed by colonizers. The United States, Canada, Australia and New Zealand have similar histories regarding ethnic minorities. Indigenous groups are also found in Latin America and in most Asian countries. Other categories and contexts include migrant workers, their descendants forming strong ethnic communities, for example Turks in Germany or Pakistanis in the United Kingdom. Then there are ethno-nations, for example the Quebecers in Canada or the Basques in Spain. Ethnic minority. According to Daniel Smulla, national or ethnic minority can be understood as a group of people within a given national state, which is numerically smaller than the rest of the population of the state or a part of the state, which is not a dominant position, which has culture, language, religion, race, etc. distinct from that of the majority of the population, whose members have a will to preserve their specificity, whose members are citizens of the state where they have the status of a minority, which have a long-term presence on the territory where it has lived. Three broad categories can be identified as issues surrounding ethnic minorities. The first category includes the most severe acts involving mass societal aggression. 5 sets of examples can be mentioned here. First is the annihilation of native peoples in North America, South Africa and Australia from the 17th to the 20th century. Second example can be the Nazi Holocaust during the Second World War, that is from 1939 to 1945. Third is the plantation slavery from the late 17th to the mid 19th centuries. For example, is the massacres of Tutsi by Hutu in Rwanda in 1994. And finally, mention can also be made of ethnic cleansing of the Kukis by the Nagas in the 1980s in India and Kosovar Albanians by Serbs in the 1990s. The second category of ethnic exclusion and discrimination involves lack of social rights such as denial of access to opportunities and rewards. This led to injustice which constrained the ethnic community from political participation. This was common in all the continents. A third category of ethnic discrimination includes the use of derogatory or abusive language or forms of representation that are felt to be offensive. For example, Chinki is a term used by mainland Indians to denote the northeastern people of India. Some of the most cited factors include legacy of colonial divide and rule policies, the downfall of the state economy, the lack of a common cultural system, the primordial ethnic differentiation based on color and physical structure, etc. United Nations and ethnic minorities. Since its formation in 1945, the United Nations developed a number of norms, procedures, and mechanisms concerned with minorities. The 1947 Subcommission on Prevention of Discrimination and Protection of Minorities, the 1966 International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the 1992 Declaration on the Rights of Persons belonging to national or ethnic, religious, and linguistic minorities, hereafter United Nations Minorities Declaration, recognize and protect the rights of persons belonging to minorities. The subcommission was first formed in 1947 under the auspices of the Economic and Social Council. It was replaced by the Human Rights Council in 2006. Its primary mandate is described as to undertake studies, particularly in the light of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and to make recommendations to the Commission concerning the prevention of discrimination of any kind relating to human rights and fundamental freedoms and the protection of racial, national, religious, and linguistic minorities. One of the first initiatives of the subcommission was to investigate genocide, as by the middle of the 1970s, the Genocide Convention had not been ratified by all the members of the Security Council and appeared to be moribund after 20 years of inaction. Over the next decade, the subcommission launched a number of initiatives which included publication of the Ruhasian-Kiko report in 1978 and a Whitaker report in 1985. The Ruhasian-Kiko report ignited a political debate on account of the review of historical genocide. The Whitaker report suggested that consideration should be given to ecocide, ethnocide, and cultural genocide. The report created further controversy as it stated that the Nazi aberration has unfortunately not been the only case of genocide in the 20th century. He gave example of massacres of Hiriros in 1904, the Ottoman massacre of Armenians from 1915 to 1916, the Ukrainian pogrom of Jews in 1919, the Tutsi massacre of Hutu in Burundi in 1965 and 72, the Paraguayan massacre of Achi Indians prior to 1974, the Khmer Rouge massacre in Kampuchea between 1975 and 1978, and the contemporary, that is in 1985, Iranian killings of the Baha'is. While there are general sets of guidelines to protect minority rights, there is no agreement on the definition of minority at the United Nations, more specifically the term ethnic minority. In 1977, Francisco Caporti, Special Rapporteur of the United Nations Subcommission on Prevention of Discrimination and Protection of Minorities, defined a minority as a group numerically inferior to the rest of the population of a state in a non-dominant position, whose members, being nationals of the state, possesses ethnic, religious or linguistic characteristics differing from those of the rest of the population, and so, if only implicitly, a sense of solidarity directed towards preserving their culture, tradition, religion or language. While the nationality criteria included in the above definition has often been challenged, the requirement to be a non-dominant position remains important. In most instances, a minority group will be a numerical minority, but in others, a numerical majority may also find itself in a minority-like or non-dominant position, such as the blacks under the apartheid regime in South Africa. Thus, the United Nations Minorities Declaration is devoted to national, ethnic, religious and linguistic minorities. Now, let us proceed to the next section, Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities. The Framework Convention of the Protection of National Minorities, in short we call it FCNM, is a multilateral treaty of the Council of Europe aimed at protecting the rights of the minorities. It came into effect in 1998, and by 2009 it had been ratified by 39 member states. The broad aims of the convention are to ensure that the signatory states respect the rights of the national minority or the ethnic minorities, undertaking to combat discrimination, promote equality, preserve and develop the culture and identity of the national minorities, guarantee certain freedoms in relation to access to the media, minority language and education, and encourage the participation of national minorities in public life. The convention has come under some criticism. For example, first of all, not all member states of the Council of Europe have signed and ratified it. France and Turkey have done neither. Iceland, Belgium, Luxembourg and Greece have signed and have yet to ratify. The convention does not define national minority, and several countries set their own definition of the term when they ratify the treaty. Ethnic minorities, the Indian experience. India can be described as a nation of minorities. The People of India project listed 5,633 communities in India, and in that 635 were categorized as tribal, of which 213 are in the northeast Indian states. Although the constitution is silent on the definition of ethnic minority, it is understood to be Adivasis, who are constitutionally described as the scheduled tribes. As per the 2001 census, scheduled tribes accounted for around 84 million, 8% of the total population. One characteristic feature about the Adivasis of India is that they are not a homogeneous or unified community. There is huge diversity amongst the Adivasis. Historically, Adivasis were considered to be outside the ambit of the Hindu caste system. This social system is stratified and hierarchical in nature, and practices are based on the notion of pollution and purity. As a result, scheduled tribes have faced the brunt of historical injustice. Even today, they continue to face discrimination, social segregation, and ostracism in many aspects of public and private life. Minority issues are increasingly taking center stage in Indian politics. Separatist movements, demand for increased political representation and autonomy, or the need to provide protection to its many religions and cultures. Ethnic-based separatist movements are widespread in the northeast region of India. Many of these conflicts are yet to be resolved. Positive aspects of India is its nature of federalism and democratic polity that respect rights and claims of the ethnic minorities. The provisions that directly address the issue of minority are Article 30, Article 350A and Article 350 Clause B. National Commission for Minorities Act 1992 was established to safeguard minority rights. Article 30 of the Constitution concerns with religious and linguistic minorities, and Article 350 Clause A and 350 Clause B relates to linguistic minorities. The Mandal Commission report of 1980 endorsed the affirmative action policies existing in India. Besides, India has international commitments as far as rights of the ethnic minorities are concerned. India is a party to both the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, 1966. However, very significantly, India has made a reservation to Article 1 of both these treaties, in effect denying the application of the right to self-determination to such groups such as Kashmiris or the Nagas. India was one of the first countries to ratify the International Labour Organization's Convention, Article number 107 in 1957 on Indigenous and Tribal Population Convention. According to the viewpoint of successive Indian governments, the definition as articulated by Martinez-Cobo is restricted in application to the indigenous peoples of the American continent, Australia and New Zealand. In conclusion, we can say that the strength of ethnic loyalties for many people in making sense of their position in the world in pre-modern, modern and contemporary times indicate the likelihood that ethnic conflict will continue. This is despite international declarations and interventions, creative national policies and inter-ethnic mixing. In the context of the insecure national states and global inequalities, population mobility and international migration will lead to greater cultural diversification of the national populations. The globalizing cosmopolitan forces are also stimulating new forms of ethnic defensiveness towards new migrants as well as toward long-established minorities. This demands that power-sharing solutions need to be developed in many national contexts where ethnic divisions have not produced conflict or separation. Forms of federalism which have contributed and enabled the establishment of multi-ethnic states needs to be adopted for harmonical relationship among ethnicities in any political system. Thank you.